Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome to the Sober Identity Podcast. Christian Nyland here. We're live from Dallas, Texas, out of all places. I'm on the road this week, and I'm sampling, doing some recordings on the road. So I've got a new little setup here, figuring out the quirks. But it looks like the picture quality is much better than my home setup. So I'm going to take note of that. But I want to get right into it. I've got an amazing guest. I say this all the time because it's always true. I've got Dustin Riechmann here. Him and I have gotten to know each other probably about last year and a half. And it was so cool. I was thinking about this today as I was at the gym. You and I chatted, I want to say it's been over a year ago. We got paired up on that first kind of one-on-one call setup. And it was so cool because the discussion came up about my sobriety journey. And Dustin, you shared some interesting information on going through the 75 hard process, which is so funny because one of my last guests a couple episodes ago, same thing, utilized that same program to kick booze. So I just want you to kick this thing off, man. Give us just a quick intro on you and what you're about, and throw something a little more personalized in there too.
Sure. Well, it's awesome to be here, Christian. And we'll get into the sober journey and the hims and haws and fits and starts that I've had with that over the years. But yeah, so first and foremost, 23 years married, very happily, three kids. One's getting ready to move out in 2 weeks. One just graduated high school, and I got one in high school. Yeah, I guess on the fun fact side. So I've done everything from being a professional engineer to doing a marriage ministry business to selling meat sticks to now actually ironically helping people use podcast guesting to grow their business with the company I do now. So professionally, I've had all kinds of weird adventures, but they've all kind of coalesced into what I get to do today, which is gives me a ton of joy and has really been enhanced over the past 10 months as we'll get into making the decision to kick booze.
That's so cool. Yeah, I'm so curious about, obviously, right behind you there, you got the seven-figure leap business you're a part of, and I'm so stoked to ask you some questions about that as we continue on. But I'd like the listener to get a glimpse into your personal relationship with alcohol. Everybody's story is so different, and I'm always fascinated to get a glimpse into how that started for you, kind of the transition throughout, and then getting to you to the point of finally saying, you know what, this thing's not serving me anymore. Like, I want to go all in. Now you're 10 plus months into it. So give us a glimpse into the younger Dustin, if you will, and how that whole relationship with alcohol began.
Yeah, it's a pretty deep story that kind of starts at birth. I won't go, too deep on that. But yeah, my dad was an alcoholic and created lots and lots of problems for me and my family growing up. So, you know, he was 18 years older than my mom. That created an interesting dynamic. I had a half brother who's his stepson who was 6 years older than me. That created a lot of chaos and drama in our household. But the main thing I would say is like growing up, he was a good dad and was present and worked except when he was drinking. And he had a very, Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde relationship with alcohol where he was extremely abusive, some to me, very much to my brother, and very, very much to my mom, to the point that one time I witnessed, as probably about 6 year old, him throwing her across the kitchen, across an open oven door, and broke her back. And she had a nervous breakdown and had to go live with my grandparents. Like, it gets pretty deep. And so they ultimately ended up divorcing in high school, which I thought was like a huge blessing because she had been trapped in this crazy abusive alcohol fueled relationship for so long. And they ultimately ended up remarrying. And my now wife and I stood as the attendants at their marriage when my dad got sober as a much older man. And then he lived about 10 more years. He passed away 13 years ago. So just to give you a little color, like alcohol has been a front and center part of my existence as long as I can remember. And so from my personal relationship, I'd say like sixth grade, hanging out with some older kids. There were some, airplane bottles of booze that gets passed around. And, I partook a little bit there, but I didn't really start drinking, how I would say that, until high school. And I can distinctly remember being out with a buddy and a couple friends, staying all night at his house, doing some fishing. Someone shows up, an older brother with a six pack of Bud Light or whatever, and just having this really visceral fear of like, I want to do this. I'm going to drink this. And will I become an angry drunk that tries to beat up my friends and have everyone hate me? Because I felt like there was going to be this switch that might flip, just like I saw with my dad. But I drank the beer. It was fun. I just kind of became a more jovial version of myself. And from that point forward, I kind of always drank, and it became kind of part of the culture here in the St. Louis area. And so the good news is I did not have that same experience as my dad. And because of that, I think for a long time denied that it was an issue. It was like, oh, I'm not my dad. I'm not beating up my wife. My kids still like me. And that was a relief at first. And I think it also became a trap, ultimately. And then I really became dependent on it as we'll get further in the story. But that's kind of where it starts from childhood up to teenage, up into college, was just the kind of prototypical, some binge drinking, a lot of drinking with friends. And yeah, it kind of become more and more frequent as I got older.
Yeah, thanks for sharing all that. That there's a lot there that I'm soaking up
Yeah.
too, and I think it was very interesting how you put that in, or that one moment where you went, "I'm going to do this," but you had fear. I mean, there was a
Oh, yeah.
ton of fear built into that moment for you, which makes perfect sense. But it's so interesting that we still go to this substance. Even though we grow up with alcoholic parents, we see the nasty side of alcohol. We know that this thing deep down is vicious, it's scary to deal with, but we still go to it. It's the thing that is just, it scares the crap out of me for so many people, so many young kids growing up, that they see this glamorized aspect of booze all the time. And you know what I'm talking about, man. I can't go walking through the store with my kids without seeing the glorious aisle. It's like the, you know, everything is so colorful now. Like all the bottles of beer and all the things, all the intricacies and everything. It's so in your face all the time. And so I get it. I get exactly what you're saying. I get why someone in your position would absolutely be like, screw it, I'm doing this because this looks awesome.
Yeah, this is what
You
everyone
know?
does. This is the rite of passage. Now's my time. And I think I'd probably, as weird as it might sound, I think I probably like told my friends, watch over me if I, go berserk here, like put me in a cage or something. Like it's not personal. And like I said, then after I experienced it, it was like, that wasn't so bad, and now of course I'm like, wish I would have just not picked it up at all. But for the 30 years from that point till now, till last year when I made this choice, it was just a very ingrained part. And I think what you said is true. Like, thinking about my own kids and growing up with, or having them grow up in our house. Yes, you like go to the store, it's the neon lights, but like for us, in the Midwest, it's just literally part of the culture. It's like every graduation party, every family event, every Christmas, like everyone has the bourbon or the beer. It's just part of that. Every sporting event you go to, even your kids' sporting events, is part of that. And so it is very prolific. And of course, you can't like watch an NFL game without just being inundated with alcohol ads too. So I'm sure we'll get into how I'm seeing this show up in my kids' lives now. But yeah, man, it was just felt so normal and natural. And I honestly, as I'm reflecting on it, I'm like, I think I felt almost a bit of pride and like, I can handle this. I'm not my dad. And at the same time, there's a slippery slope into things that were like my dad in ways I didn't want to admit.
Yeah, that is so telling. It was interesting how you mentioned that the first time you drank, like it changed you to be more jovial, is how you put it. Describe that moment for whoever's listening to understand what that truly means for you.
Yeah, man, I think it was, that moment and really this whole sort of like sophomore, junior, senior year of high school. I was never the type to like go to the big parties in the cornfields. I was much more of a, hey, let's three or four guys get together, play some poker, fish all night, and we'd just be drinking beer. And it was just like relaxing. It was chill. We would, laugh a lot, play video games. And I think there was a part of it that was actually the physical elation that came from that. But more than that, probably it was the fact that we were like sneaking around. It's, oh, your parents don't know. We got to hide the beer cans. I think there was some adventure in that as a teenager that I thought was pretty cool. I never, as an adult, I certainly did, but as a teenager, I kept some boundaries. Like I never drank and then drove. We always kind of slept it off at their house and that sort of thing. But yeah, it was just, to me, it was a rite of passage. It was just like something to do with your friends. Every one of my friends was drinking, and I guess at the time I thought it really made it fun to go fishing all night, or fun to do, some of the things we were doing, because I think that's what we're trained to believe as teens.
Yeah, absolutely. And it gave you an escape, right, from your family life. I mean, and to be able to hang with your boys, do things that are wrong, like push those limits, right, and grow into more of a social being too. Maybe I don't know if for you being in that environment of just chaos where it kind of subdued your personality and your emotions to where you got to go out with the boys in the field and be like, yeah, let's crack some beers. And you got to just go, this feels amazing, and I so understand that. That's exactly describes how I was too. I was so shy and everything else. And I had stuff going on in my life too that just kind of subdued me. And alcohol was like this trick, just this like boom, exploded my social life because it just allowed me to be me. Is really looking back, Dustin, like that was the only thing. It was like I get to be myself with the guys. They think I'm cool. Like now I actually feel like my self-esteem is elevated. Like this is incredible. And so it's like this really freeing high, but with a really nasty addictive substance that it comes with a lot of shit behind it, right?
Oh
So
yeah. Yeah. And as
yeah,
I got
very
a little older, I'd say at that time it was more of a, with the guys, something to sneak off and do and have fun when we're, chilling and hanging out and spending the night and stuff like that. As I got, into college and then in my young kind of adult life, I got married when I was 21 to my high school sweetheart. So she had been around this stuff with me too. And her parents, drank and all that stuff. I think it definitely transitioned into sort of this like social lubricant where it was like, I'm really shy. I don't like to go to people's weddings and, like have to meet new people and talk to people or go to work events. And it was always the crutch, right? And it started to become a thing like, oh, like we went to a few weddings. I remember as early in my career as an engineer, and it was like a dry wedding, and I'd be like, I don't even want to go. Like this is going to be torture because
oh
it's not
yeah,
going
I'm
to be
not
any
doing
fun.
this.
And I have this awkwardness of having to talk to these people without the be able to like check out of my own anxieties and my own, my own just like very deep shyness that I felt.
Yeah. So how does that play into what you're doing now? I mean, you're a very successful man, very busy, very driven. How did alcohol hinder you, if you will, in what you're doing now? And like, how did it fit in to someone who is this high achieving, this successful? Like, we know the negative side effects of this. How are you able to balance that?
Yeah, through a lot of grit, I think, as it progressed. But yeah, I'd say kind of talking more in modern times, like when I was still drinking, it became more less about like a social tonic and like, hey, I can, because I got mature, I'm old enough, I'm more self-confident, all that stuff. And there was an element of that, but what it became, where became really, the alarm bells started going off for me, and I started to become a lot more sober curious and started to really do these stints and challenges of like, what if I did give it up? And, what if I only drink on the weekends? And I went through lots of those phases. I think the thing I was using it for was totally to like check out of stress. Like yes, I'm successful, got a 7-figure business. I mentioned my family. I think from the outside, everyone would look at pretty much my whole adult life. Like Dustin is an achiever and he's doing really cool things and he takes care of his family and he's growing this business now in this chapter of my life. And look at him go. And while that was true, I was very frequently looking to check out of the stress. I was like, I cannot turn my brain off. And ironically, I thought it was the way to get to sleep. And I think like struggling with sleep in the last 10 years was really where I started to drink more heavily and started sneaking around more because like, I know I can handle this. I need a certain amount to like relax and be able to go to sleep. My wife might think this is too much. So that's when it starts to become, like drinking on the side, drinking more than she knows, and that sort of thing. But yeah, I think stress relief and sleep. And then, on the other side of this, of course, I realize that I sleep way better and have way less stress without it. But that's that vicious cycle you get in. It's like need to drink so I can chill and relax and get to sleep tonight. And then the next day, the anxiety grows. So I need to drink again because I can't check back out. And breaking that cycle is tough, but on the other side of it, the peace and the just total lack of baseline anxiety that I thought was just part of who I was is gone. And like I didn't realize that until at least 90 days of sobriety. So yeah, not to get too far ahead, but yeah, I think that's the key in the adult phase. There's kind of these phases of why I was doing it, chilling out, hanging out, fitting in, social lubricant. Like, hey, I'm shy. I got to deal with all this like family events. Then we start having kids, career, business, and as the stress levels went up in the day life, the nightlife became. I need to check out, kind of kill off my consciousness in a way, so I could just like not be stressed and obsessed. It became my time, and then ultimately I started to check too far out, and I'd start to forget things and have horrible next days, and just it turned into just a cycle of like, yeah, some days there were some vicious hangovers, but that wasn't most of the time. That maybe that was 5% of the time I'd really overdo it and actually be sick the next day. Most of the time I just kind of woke up a little hazy, kind of shake it off, go for a run. But the thing that didn't leave was the anxiety. And I never self identified as someone with anxiety until I didn't have it. And I realized that that wasn't normal.
I love you bringing this up because I could say the exact same words, dude. Like, I had no clue the levels of anxiety that I ran with day to day. No idea. So then you take this fire you've got every day and you're pouring this gasoline on it with whiskey and booze and IPAs and all the things. And then you feel that like hours worth of like, oh yeah, my life is good. I got everything handled. I got my motivation, like all good. And I know I can wake up in the morning and kill it in business and shake the hangover off and run and sweat it out. There is so much going on mentally with that process. And when you describe this, like I just felt the stress building in me because I remember it so well of like, that ticking time bomb always going because you can never catch up. You can never catch up mentally, physically, anything because you're always going, I'm always kind of feeling like crap when I wake up. And then, oh, the stress piles on me that day. And then I go to try to relieve it and it builds back up and it just keeps growing more and more and more and more and more. And so it's so cool that you're seeing the light, buddy. I mean, so many men in particular are seeing the light now. And it's so hilarious to hear people say, yeah. And I've worked with guys like this too. They're like, oh yeah, I had a glass of wine last night, slept like a baby. And I'm like, dude, no way in hell. Because anytime I had even one beer in my system and try to sleep, it was always choppy. It's scientifically proven. It wrecks your REM sleep every time. And so then, you go through this 75 hard, you start to notice this. And it's like people take that so for granted. The sleep alone will cure so many issues in your life, cure so much stress, and yet we go and reach for a scotch or we reach for something for that nightcap and then we overdo it because it feels so nice to be relaxed and it just the cycle continues. So thanks for sharing that because I know
Exactly. Yeah.
so many guys are like, oh yeah, that's me.
Oh yeah. Big time.
Yeah. So going back into, when did alcohol become something that you started to deep down know became a real negative for you, where you're like, okay, I am pushing the limits a little bit here? You mentioned a little bit about hiding, and I want to really spotlight that because I did the same thing. So
Yeah. So it's a little gray. It's a little fuzzy. There's a few line of demarcations. There's a few events that I could highlight, right? But I'd say sort of the trend was certainly like observing in myself. Oh, like I'm buying another fifth of bourbon, and like oh, I'm like I'm out already. That sort of thing. Like oh, I drank more than I realized I did, and I also started. I was trying to put limits on myself of like not gonna drink during the week because that's not healthy. I'll just drink on the weekends, and then it's Tuesday night and someone's watching a football game, I'll be there, right? And like I'd find all these reasons to make it a social occasion to drink and then sort of like give an excuse. And that was I'd say that was like maybe the last 5 to 10 years ago and or 10 to 5 years ago. And I'd say in the last like 5 years it became more of a that if my wife had a meeting at night, cool, I'm drinking by myself. I'm gonna watch the game, I'm gonna do work. I would like sit here and do work at night, drink bourbon, and so it became much more of an isolating thing. It wasn't it switched from being only with other people and that was my excuse to like, oh, now I can handle this on my own, right? And so I started drinking alone more often and socially. Yeah, and so that was sort of the trend. I would say the I know for sure when I became like really sober curious, I don't know if that's a term you like, but I started to like think about what if I didn't drink, and I was terrified, honestly, of giving up that identity. I was known as the bourbon collector and the guy you could count on to come over and watch football with, and everything, taking my kids fishing, everything had alcohol involved. And so it's like, how do I remove that? Like my wife and I's date nights were wine tastings or going to breweries. We go on vacation. We went last year right before I got sober to Italy, drank, every night of the trip. And it was just like, what else do I do? This is like what we do. Right. And so, but about it was 2021 was the first time I did 75 hard. So I actually did it 3 times. And hopefully this will give the listeners an indication. Like I can be very disciplined. And so, despite what I now recognize as an addiction, in 2021, I was like, I want to do 75 hard. And like, I was pudgy. I wanted to lose some weight. And I was feeling a lot of this like weight because this is right when my business was taking off. And I was feeling very stressed. And I knew back here in the back of my mind, like, this will also force me not to be able to drink. What would, let's see what this is like. And so I did 75 hard. I didn't drink. First, there probably hadn't been a week long stretch in my adult life where I hadn't drank something. And so now I'm committing 75 days with no alcohol and all the other things that come with that. And it ended on Halloween. And Halloween in our neighborhood's a big drinking thing. Hey, you walk around with the kids, everyone's drinking. There's people handing out beers at the doors, and so I was just like, I did do it, and I quit drinking for 75 days. But on day 76 is like, yes, I started drinking. I think I drank every night through New Year's. It was just like now because I had no
It's a free
intention of
for all,
making
baby.
a lifestyle change. But in that experiment, that's how I viewed it. I'm like, I'll try this for 75 days. Something crazy that I noticed because I don't have like an Aura ring, I don't track my sleep, but I do have an Apple Watch, and I found this setting on there with your resting heart rate. And it's like, hey, there's been a trend, your resting heart rate's down. And I'm like, that's interesting. And so I kind of attributed it to I was eating cleaner, I was drinking a lot of water, I was working out. And of course, I wasn't drinking. And so I was like, it dropped by like 10 beats a minute. It was like, that's a lot. I'm like 20% less heartbeats. Like that's pretty significant. And I was feeling better and sleeping better. And then I started drinking again. And then in 2023, in Lent, I gave up alcohol for 40 days and ended up quitting about 30 days in because there was some big event. I had a good excuse to tell my wife, like, oh, I'll just drink this one time. And I drank every day till Easter. And then that fall, the exact same time frame, back to school, I did 75 hard again, same kind of experience. And I'm like, and I didn't really, I did all the requirements, but I didn't like intensely work out. I was like, I'm just gonna try the I'm gonna walk instead of like really pushing it. Heart rate dropped like a rock again, in a good way. And I'm like, that's interesting. So last year, 2024, my 45th birthday, my wife's out of town and she's actually going to be out of town for 2 nights, which is usually like, cool, I'm free to drink and like this will be a fun time. I'll catch up on work, watch TV. And the first night she was not here. It was my 45th birthday. I was kind of feeling sorry for myself because she wasn't able to be home. And so I drank bourbon. And then I woke up the next day and I'm like, well, she's not going to be here tonight either. And I was pretty hungover. I was like, you know what? Like, I want to do 75 hard again. Completely, I didn't tell anyone else this, but completely because I'm thinking this could be the time I actually stick with the alcohol part. And so it took me 3 times, but the third time last year, July 17th was my first day of 75 hard. I was very conscious of it, and I was like, hey, like, what if I started kind of thinking, what if I just didn't pick this back up? I got to this, and I talked to you not long before that. Our mutual friend Des, who's in Front Row Dads with me, he was about a month into his own sobriety, so he's been about a month or two ahead of me. And he's like, hey, you get to end the 75 days. Why don't you keep, drop all the other 75 hard stuff, but like just keep up the drinking until day 90. It was like, just get to day 90. So you got 2 more weeks. So I'll push you through Halloween because I was in the same cycle. And yeah, so I did that, and it was really fun and interesting. In that 2 week period, it was very telling. I no longer had the excuse of 75 hard to tell my buddies when we do our fantasy football draft or we're going out, oh, I'm on 75 hard, I can't drink. It was just like, I'm not drinking. And so, oh, you're not? You still doing 75 hard? No, actually, I'm just not drinking until the end of October, or whatever. And so, anyway, Christian, what I found was I gave up all the 75 hard disciplines except the drinking. Yeah. And then the heart rate stayed down. I felt really good. I was sleeping good. I was like, that's actually the factor. This other stuff I'm sure had a little input, but the reason I feel so good, I'm sleeping good, my heart rate's down, is actually the alcohol part. And I've just never picked it back up since. And there's some really interesting stuff in there with my wife we can get into because this was actually a tough conversation with her when I went down this path, and I'm happy to share that. But that's enough talking for now. That hopefully gives you kind of the 2 year window of experimentation and really getting serious. I was reading some books on sobriety. I talked to you. I was following your stuff in Front Row Dads. Had Des in my corner. He was a few steps ahead of me in the journey, and I just started to like try on this. Like, what if I just didn't drink again? What would that be like? So
Awesome stuff. And for anybody listening, this is a common story that I hear, and a common story because I also resonate with that one. It's exactly my journey as well, Dustin, of try this, try again, try again, try again. But the common theme here is there's always that gut of feeling of like, I think I might want to do this. And if you are listening right now, listen to that. And even if you know it's going to be hard, we're telling you right now, it's not easy. I would be lying to you if I said this was easy, but all the beautiful things in life take effort, discipline, consistency, and they're beautiful on the other end. Your story is right in line with that. And so I love the fact that you brought up discipline in this, because you are disciplined. Even as a drinker, you are disciplined, because guess what? You have to plan this out. If you don't want to be a bum on the streets with your bottle of vodka laying in the gutter and be a high achieving individual, like, you're going to have to plan this into your life, and you're going to have to operate at a high level even when your body's not functioning at a high level. That's the part that is shocking, of how so many people accept this behavior. They accept this way of life. They accept that mediocrity, and they accept not running at peak, right? And I know that you and I are on the same wavelength with this. We like to be at our peak, whether it's personally, professionally, as a family man, all those things. And yet we kept going back to this thing that was dragging us away from our peak. Like, what the fuck? So I think that's such a great way to put it. And I'm so glad that you shared it in the way that you did. I mean, just removing alcohol, you guys, even if your identity is wrapped up in it, which I love you brought that up too, you can change it. Yes, there's a lot of fear there, but it's the one game changing thing that you can do in your life. If you drink alcohol right now, if you remove it, you will be shocked at the positive changes physically, mentally, in your business, in your career, at home. It is so important. It gives me goosebumps when I say this out loud. It's that
Yep.
powerful, yet it's just thrown in our face constantly. It's the rite of passage, like you talked about. Being a man, you got to be able to drink, you got to be able to handle your booze. Congratulations. I don't have any awards, no accolades. And trust me when I say I should have a whole trophy room when it came to my 20 years of drinking. And I know you too, man. We'd be best of buds back in our drinking days. Absolutely. Like, any excuse, all the things. And so if you can have the courage to do this, it's totally possible to shift your life. So I love, love, love what you said there. I want to tie into your conversation with your wife. I think this is also a very fear-based view on sobriety, because if you're married to or in a serious relationship with someone, and you're used to doing the wine nights, the wine tasting, the sitting down with a cocktail, the happy hours, it's all booze related. Like, how did you go about that? How did that conversation go? I'd love to hear about
Yeah. I'll talk about the moment here because I think this is really important, and then if it makes for the listeners' benefit, I can talk about some other really negative moments that I can only recognize in hindsight that I kind of brushed off. There were definitely events along the way with my wife, and again, to keep in mind, I met her when I was 16. I started dating her when I was 16. She's 15, like literally my lifelong partner. Helped me become a Christian. Has been like she's like literally my guardian angel, and so I very much trust her. She grew up in the same culture. Her dad, her mom and dad still drink, and like we go to their house, you get offered a drink, and like that's how she grew up. What I always observed in her though was she is very happy to have a glass of wine, not even finish it. And I mean, like I was never that guy. I was always like, one's good, three's better. And then like, oh, you got a bourbon? Let me have a little sip of that. And like I just try to like accumulate it because it made me more and more energetic. And this is something I learned in my journey through the Andrew Huberman podcast, that I was wired in a way that as I drank, I got more energy and I'd want to stay up longer. And when she was more normal, and so she would drink and she's like, oh, well, go to, I'm chill, I'm going to go to bed. And I was always like, oh, I'm going to stay up, and so that was sort of the dynamic throughout the years. And when we traveled, it was always a weird thing because vacation, I'd want to stay up by myself and drink a little more when everyone else wanted to go to bed. And so we had a dynamic through 30 years of relationship, and all that built up to a lot of fear in me, where I noticed when I did 75 hard, she was a huge supporter, never questioned it. But also I was like, well, good. When does this end? Sort of thing. Like we can go out again, and we can go out on wine tasting or whatever. So the social aspect with my wife was like a deep seated fear. And to be completely transparent, I drank to sleep better. I also found that sometimes I'd have some sexual anxiety, and it was like if I hit the right mark and I drank just right, I would be better in bed. I'd last longer. This would be great. Like I could chill. She drank even better. And so there was a very false dichotomy, or maybe that was good a couple times. Most of the time it was bad, but she didn't really talk about it much until this conversation. And so this conversation happened about 2 weeks from the end of 75 hard last year. So she knew she was on this work trip, and I said, "Hey, I'm starting 75 hard today." And she said, "Really?" I'm like, "Yeah, I just turned 45, So like, I wasn't telling her about the drinking part. I'm like, I think I want to do this again. Great, okay. And so she came home, and we did our normal 75 hard routine. And about 2 weeks out, we went on this date night because I had a business milestone I wanted to celebrate. And she had a glass of wine, which is a really cool Italian restaurant, and I had some mocktail. And this is a very innocent, like in-depth conversation, but we're finishing dinner, walking to the car, and she's like, "So what's next after 75 hard?" And I was like, "That's an interesting question." And I was like, "Well, actually, and I kind of blamed it on Des, or well, Des
Shout out to
challenged
Des.
me. So now I got another, it's like the extension of 75 hard. Well, one of my front row dad's brothers, he challenged me to go 90 days. So I'm going to do that. Oh, that's interesting. So you're not going to drink, for 90 days. She's like, what about after that? And I was like, well, if I'm being honest, I've been thinking about, like, what if I just didn't drink, and I was immediately like, but I'm really honestly kind of afraid what that would do for our social life. And finally had this like really raw, open conversation. We just sat in the car. Like we got out of the restaurant. This conversation had started. And before I started the car, we just started talking. We sat there for like 45 minutes, and it became very apparent to me that this is something she's kind of always wanted me to do. And she didn't want to be the one that brought it up. She knew my family history. She didn't want to be accusatory. She wanted me to feel bad. I'm a great husband. I'm a great dad, but I think you're better without it, is sort of the theme of the conversation. I was like, really? And I was like, like, we want to go to, Napa Valley. We want to do this stuff. Like, it'd be kind of weird to do that, if I'm not drinking. She's like, that's, who cares, sort of thing. She's like, but what I can tell you though is every time you do 75 hard, and I've noticed it more this time, is you're just a more peaceful person. And I'm like, peaceful? Like that's an interesting word. I'm like, what do you mean? Because I'm kind of like getting into this. I'm like, what do you mean? Like, tell me more about me, And she's like, yeah, you're just more peaceful. You're more patient. She's like, it's not that you're an asshole all the time, but like you're more patient with the kids, you're more patient with me. And then the kicker, she's like, while we're talking about it, the sexual stuff's way better when you're not drinking. I don't like to smell your bourbon breath. I don't like to feel like you're half asleep. I don't like waking you off the recliner before we go to bed. The stuff that was happening from time to time. I'm just like, so now she's tapped into my like primal. I'm like, so I'm better at sex without alcohol, and you like me better day to day, and I'm more peaceful, and you think I'm a better dad, and all this stuff. And that was really a turning point, because it was like the release of the fear of you're going to be less fun without it. It was actually the opposite of like, I can deal with that. That's not a big deal. I like the day to day Dustin way better without it. And I was like, cool, well, I'm going to do at least the 90 days. And at that point, I'm thinking I might do this for a long time or forever. Yeah. And then there were, in my insecurity, there were numerous date nights that followed where I'm like, is this still working for you? Like I'm still not drinking. So I love it. I love it. I love it. And so she's become a huge supporter. We don't talk about it much. It's not like that big a deal, but she will do things like when she's at the grocery store, take a picture of the newest non-alcoholic beer. Hey, you want to try this? She's supportive in subtle ways, and I know that it means a ton to her. But that one little parking lot conversation made me feel so free to finally just kind of put it on the table. And when you do that, with any kind of baggage or trauma, it just opens up so many better conversations. It's like, hey, there was this time in 2022 where you did this thing and I was embarrassed and I didn't say anything. And I'm like, really? Well, I have this journal entry that was on this desk back here that I found the other day that was like, it finally happened. And it was me writing about, I finally really overdid it. And basically I passed out before we were planning to make love, and how she was devastated the next day. And I'd sort of blocked all that out, but I found it like recently. So anyway, very long way of saying, I found out my wife was actually very supportive of this. She still has a glass of wine when we go out on date night, and I have zero qualms about that. She maybe drinks one drink every 2 weeks. She's so good with it, and that was just, and it's for me, it's a really good contrast of like, that's not me. I can't have that one drink anymore, or I never really could, even though I thought I could. And yeah, so that's a little inside baseball on the relationship dynamic that this has spurred.
That is beautiful. I just think that's such a great, great story because hopefully that gives someone the courage to have that discussion with a significant other, like today,
Yeah.
because it turned into such a beautiful discussion that you had no idea could possibly even happen, right? And for your wife, who is a total just rock star, I just love that she leaned into that moment and was like, Dustin, you are such a better human without this. Everything is better when you don't drink. I have story after memory after scenario that, yeah, it's been this gigantic elephant in the room in your relationship, it sounds like, and she's been trying to be
And she said, I
probably,
would never say anything to you, but just so you know, every time you've drank that I'm around, I count the drinks. I'm like, really? Like, yeah, I didn't know that, And so when I'm being sneaky and having an extra one, she knows it, and she knows when I've changed because I've drank too much. And it was a very freeing conversation for her, I'm sure, to kind of get that off her chest. And, like I said, just there was so much pride. I think it really deepened our relationship because we were able to have an open, honest conversation about the monkey on the back for both of us. And I want to, for anyone listening, what I want to emphasize is like the 3 or 4, like what I would call major events in 30 years of our relationship. So it's not, I was not my dad, I was not verbally abusive. I never stormed out of the house. I never put my kids in danger by drunk driving and not remember how I got home. I mean, it wasn't that, but it was the day to day existence of what I now recognize as there were some of the acute moments of drinking too much, a few, but most of it was like the baseline, what I now would call anxiety, right? Like the fact that my resting heart rate is 10 beats lower by default means I'm a more peaceful person. I get less stressed. I'm less agitated. I'm easier to be around. I go to bed at the same time as her. I sleep well. We get up in the mornings and have coffee together, whereas maybe I'd be dragging ass, and be like, I'll be there in a minute, like because I didn't feel good. There's so many, it's the subtle things that I think really were the big the big deal to her. She could look past if it was like, hey, yeah, once a year he gets hammered and it's annoying, but it was like the baseline behavior change that had been building over decades that I couldn't see for myself, and like you said, until I was off it for at least 90 days, I didn't know the difference. And I think if someone's listening and they're like, hey, I'm a high achiever, I would get drunk and then go run a half marathon the next day. It's not like I wasn't performing, but now I realized I was doing it all on hard mode. You think about like when you're playing video games, is the hard mode, the easy mode. I feel like now I'm living life on easy mode. Like I purposely was living life on hard mode every day because I was drinking and just didn't realize there was a different way to feel and think and exist. And so it's been a huge gift. And so, Christian, you definitely get some credit in this for continuing to push me, not by pushing me, but by just showing me an example of like he's a cool dude. He can do it. I got Dez. He can do it. And I think there's a few key people in my life that helped me use the discipline I already have and actually like push through the other side and try on a new identity and see what it felt like. And after 90 days, I realized it was, I guess the best way I describe this, kind of put a bow on it, is like, it's not a lightning bolt. That conversation with her was really important, but there was no lightning bolt moment where I'm like, I'm cured. I don't need to drink. It was this someday, at some point I had a realization because every day is a choice whether to drink. I'm like, there are like I used to think pros and cons. It's like, well, the cons, yeah, they're bad. I can deal with it though. It's like, yeah, I'll be hungover a little bit, whatever. But man, and I started realizing there are no pros. Like I was like, what is the benefit of actually drinking? And it's like there are none. There's some things that maybe it makes it feel a little easier with social and getting friends and stuff, but ultimately I decided the pros and cons were all on one side, and so it just made no logical sense as someone who's very logically oriented. There's no there's no choice to be made to drink. It doesn't make any sense for me.
yeah. And I think it's so neat that you and your wife now recognize how much of a strain that truly was in the room, right? She's watching you constantly like, oh, he's on drink number three. And you're like, okay, did she see me drink that drink number three? And then, okay, am I going to be, able to perform tonight? And she's like, here we go again. I'm gonna have to drag his ass out the recliner. Like, you're
Yeah.
playing this gymnastics, and it's so sad. It just, to me, is just such a sad picture, right? But
It,
we get in our ruts and our routines, and if nobody wants to voice it and push past that fear, you're never going to figure this out. So cool. If I have this drink and I do this, I don't do it as much anymore, but I did in early sobriety of, all right, I'm in a place where there are people sitting and drinking right now. I'm going to walk down that path. And I've done this many times. My job puts me in a lot of hotels, nice swanky bars. That's what everybody does. All my coworkers go do that. And I've sat there and I've looked at the bar and I've been like, okay, if you ordered that IPA over there that you love and you sat down, you drank it, how is that going to change your life right now? How is that going to feel? What's going to happen with the rest of that night? How are you going to feel in the morning? What is this doing for your life? Start asking yourself these legitimate questions. And we all know the answer. I laugh now. I'm like, oh, yeah, I know exactly what would happen. Forget it. So I think it's so important to just walk it down in your brain. If you think this is so positive and so wonderful in your life, just think before you do it and go, okay, yeah, if I go get blacked out tonight with these people, how fulfilling is that truly going to be for me? And think about all the other times that I made that same decision and how fulfilling that was. I mean, I could write a book, and I'm sure you can too, of all these sketchy situations you got in, thinking that you can go out and drink your face off or have, 2 or 3 beers, and all of a sudden it's going to be this magical night. I'm going to meet refreshing people. There's going to be this hot chick that's totally going to be into me, and
Yeah.
I'm totally going to get her number, and she's totally going to sleep with me. And like, you just start running with these thoughts because you got this massive dopamine hit of alcohol in your system. It's just chaos. And then it comes crashing down, and you're like, ah, fuck, why'd I do that again?
Yeah.
So
And there was definitely that period, just to double tap just a little bit on that, from the 75 hard was a hard commitment. And then the next 2 weeks was a hard commitment because I told Des, yeah, I'll do it for 90 days. And that's when this discussion with my wife happened. But about day 85, I was actually on a work trip. I got invited to this private dinner. It was all dudes who I really respected, really great guys, great marketers, private steak dinner, open bourbon bar, cigars, and like, I'm the only one not drinking. I'm totally at this event. I don't know anyone. And I Ubered there. My wife's never going to know. There was very much this temptation of like, I could have bourbon here, what's it going to hurt? Who's going to know? Whatever. And instead, I did exactly what you said. I'm like, but what's the upside? And so I created my own upside. I took a picture of the bourbon bar and I sent it to my wife and I said, not today, Satan, or something silly, like
yeah.
that. And she wrote back, she's like, did you have some? And I'm like, no, I didn't have any. And she gave me, the hearts back. And I was like, so I kind of redirected and like, I'm going to show her that I'm making good choices, even when I am very tempted. It'd be very easy not to. But I think when I got past that, I don't know exactly when this was, sometime, you know, 3 to 6 months in, I think the most peaceful thing now is I've taken the choice off the table. And so I used to sit there and be like vacillating, like, is this a good enough reason to drink? And, I would always have to make a choice. Is this, if I'm not drinking Monday through Thursday, but it's Thursday, but this is happening, is that okay? And like, if I'm not going to drink tomorrow, how much can I drink tonight? And like, if I need to have another bottle of bourbon and I don't want to take my wife to the store, when am I going to sneak that in? And there's like, it was a constant decision that had to be made in my mind. Am I going to drink? When am I going to drink? How am I going to drink? And in every social setting I was in, it was like, am I going to drink? How much am I going to drink? And, you know, now by just not drinking, it's removed so much like mental load because I realized how much of a pervasive, constant rhythm was in my head about this stuff. And it's like, freaking for what? Like it served me in no way. So now I am at that place, Christian, for sure, where it's like, I just don't drink. And so there's no choice to be made. And it's like so freeing. Like yeah, and my friends know and whatever, like they can all drink and I can hang out with them having a non-alcoholic beer and they're not giving me shit. And if they do, I give it back because I don't care now. It's like I'm doing what's right for me and my family. But I think that when you get to that point, for anyone who's like in this middle phase, when it no longer becomes a choice and it's something that you would find that you actually think a lot about when you're in those situations, that's like ultimate freedom to me.
I always thought of it this way. Person I've met who has taken this path of removing alcohol from their lives never regretted it. Everything has been positive. So I basically, it's the metaphor of I put all my chips in on sobriety. I finally said, fuck it. I am all in on sobriety because I go, I'm not going to lose. I can't lose. The odds are
There's no
100% in my
downside.
favor. So I said, fuck it, let's go. And I want you to spin into this is perfect, spin into your last 10 plus months. I want you to give us the positive highlight reel of how things have shifted for you in 10 months because I want people to hear it.
Yeah, it's a lot. So kind of talked about the wife. That's continued. I'd say our communication, our relationship, her respect for me, our intimate relationship, my my faith life, because I'm not, like when I show up at a morning prayer breakfast with some friends or I go to church, I'm not like, I would literally, I'm Catholic, I would go up for communion for the Eucharist. And there were times where, again, I didn't know what it was. I started to feel dizzy and I was like, it was actually anxiety. And it was the anxiety from drinking that weekend. You know what I mean? I wasn't like drunk at the service or even necessarily hungover, but like that really, that's really freeing when you're a person of faith. It's like, I'm really here. I'm fully present. I'm not like thinking about all the stuff I did last night, trying to remember what we did. So I can have a conversation about the movie we watched and I don't remember that kind of stuff. My faith life is better. And then my kids really notice this. So we'll be at a Mexican dinner and used to order the tower of margaritas or whatever. Like, I'm having water and they're like, oh, daddy, you're so healthy. Sort of a fun jab, I'm like, oh, I don't need that stuff. And they're like, they, in their own kid way, teenage way, I can tell they really respect that. And I got a 20-year-old son. Has he drank? Of course, but I've know through the back channels of his sisters and his friends, he doesn't like to drink, and he has very little interest in it. And given my family history, that's a big plus and peace sign. I think this journey that I've been on has been enlightening him in the bads and the goods and the examples I've shown him. And I got these two daughters, one's heading off to college this fall. And, who knows? But I think they're in a much better position now to make better choices about this stuff because of my example. And then, yeah, personally, my health has never been better. The resting heart rate has stayed down. I kind of eat what I want, but my weight is, I'm not going to say I dropped 20 pounds, but like I'm at a very healthy weight. I'm going to go climb a 14er with my front row dad's brothers here in August. I'm definitely more of a peaceful person. The business is thriving. I feel like I feel kind of limitless. It's like I don't know. I think the easiest way to describe it is like, yes, life's stressful. Yes, I have a lot of work to do and things like that. But at the end of the day, I'm like, I'm ready for bed. I sleep well. I spend every evening doing some quality time stuff with my wife, and then we, go to bed same time, wake up same time. I don't know, man. The best way I could say it is like life is good. To say life is on an easy mode would be an exaggeration, but like life is on not hard mode. And I think that that's just so freeing. And so for me, I've been through the cycle now. I've done almost every event without alcohol. It's like the first concert without alcohol, the first Christmas without alcohol. I've been through most of that stuff. And I find increasingly on the next day, I'm like, that was fucking awesome. Like I'm so glad I'm not weighed down like I was the other, 30 Christmases before this or the last concert that I barely remember. Yeah. So it's just, I don't know, free, peaceful, gastic, healthy. I'm going to be 46, here in July and feel more youthful and energetic than I can remember feeling as an adult. And, the only thing that's changed in the equation is alcohol. So I think it's a pretty safe bet that that was the big change.
It's amazing. And I hope people listening, I'm sure you could go on and on and on about even more positive things, right? More little stories, little
Yeah, there's
things
the
that you're starting
communities
to.
that I lead, and I did do in-person events, and I start to observe. I'm paying for this big group dinner, open bar. If anyone's drinking, it's not alcoholic, and it's not because I told them to. It's very much, and people have told me on the side, it's my example, and I'm like, wow, I'm not doing it as overtly as Christian is with this podcast and the work that you do, and I love that. But just by living my life without it, like I'm actually inspiring and helping other people make better choices. And I mean, I'm only 10 months in. So ask me in a few years, I think this could be a really part of my legacy, which is pretty awesome too, concerning the legacy that I inherited through my past generations of alcohol abuse.
Yeah, kudos to you. And I'm so proud of you for making this decision. I mean, I know we all know how hard this is. I mean, that's that everybody around us, they're paying attention, but there's so many people, to include people listening today, that are sitting there going like, I don't know if I could ever do this. Yeah, it sounds all great and all, but you and I both know when you're in the rut, like it's not pretty. And that is our best friend. That's what we lean on. And to finally give the middle finger to your best friend and go off into the abyss. I mean, I was terrified, and that is an understatement. And I even had people around me, because you're surrounding yourself with people who enable that behavior, and they're used to that. Dustin, they're used to that Christian, like, yeah, man, come on out.
They want you to do it because it makes them feel justified in doing it themselves. And I was that guy. I was always like, wait, break out the bourbon. I know it's Tuesday night, but like I want to try that new one, right? Just so and then they would drink and I would drink, and that would make us both feel less shitty about about drinking on a Tuesday night. And so now to be the guy, and I'm 0% preachy, prescriptive. I've never told anyone don't drink. I don't care. I mean, I do care, but like I'm not trying to be in that position. I'll be the quiet one at the table who's having iced tea, and everyone's like, "Oh, you're not drinking tonight?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I don't drink anymore." And then you know as well as anyone, you know what? That guy's wife will come over. You know what? I haven't drank in 3 months. I feel so much better. Like, what's this been like for you? And I found out my sister-in-law quit drinking. And so just by like doing the thing without even trying to like tell other people about it overtly, it really is inspiring to people. And it's really cool to kind of be on the other side now and be able to be a resource and yeah, just be an example to other people of how good life can be without it.
Yeah, and I know that community is so important. I mean, you and I both know that. We're part of a community of men. Like we can't get enough of this stuff, right? And the stories just keep developing and people are growing and healing and making these shifts. I mean, so I want people that are listening to understand that even though you may be in a community that fosters your drinking habits right now, the moment you make this call and say, I'm done, I need to make a shift, you are going to start seeing some interesting things happen in the universe. And if you're a spiritual person or a religious person, I have been floored at the moments where people have come out of the woodwork that I've been around or worked with or anything along those lines. And I come to find out stories. I've been sober for 10 years. I've been sober for 8 years. I'm trying to quit drinking. I never used to drink. I've never had a sip in my life. Just any interactions, even in like just, I hired an electrician for one of my rental properties and come to find out that dude is totally sober. And we started having this awesome conversation. Nothing had to do with any of the work that was being done at the house. And it makes me so happy inside just to know that, oh my gosh, here I was and here you were thinking, uh-oh, my identity is this. What do I do when I shift it? The magic starts to happen. And I try to explain this to people like, don't worry, you're going to have people show up for you. But I also want to urge those of you who are on the fence that it is very important to try to tap into some communities. Whether that is AA for you, whether that is hopping on Facebook and joining a group, whether it's reaching out to one of us. I mean, anything you can do to go, hey, I want to be like you guys. How can I get some support? I will drop anything to help anybody going through this because I personally white knuckled it. And I will continue to say this for years because I want you to understand that that's not the best way to do this. It was really, really hard. And I wanted to ask you this. Do you think that if you already knew that you had the support around you to make that call that you would have been sober a long time ago?
Yeah, I'd say 3 to 5 years ago was the time that I really should have made this choice. I stuck in it purely through fear. That's when these experiments and commitments that I would break and all this stuff started. Yeah, I think if it's the way of the world. Like the conversation with my wife happened at the time it was meant to happen. Had that surfaced and we'd had that depth of conversation 3 to 5 years earlier, I was ready mentally. But yeah, so like it's like anything. When you accomplish something and you push through adversity and you get on the other side, you're like, how did I ever live that way? Right. And so, but yeah, totally. If I'd had some support, if I had known Christian longer, it's not a coincidence. You and I met like a year ago and we're
Yeah,
sitting here and I'm 10 months sober. So again, I want to give you credit and for our dads and, yeah. So short answer, absolutely. And so if you're listening to this, my encouragement would be, if you're curious about this stuff, like reach out to Christian. I'm happy to be a resource. Get plugged into a community. It's like the reticular activating system. Once you start looking for it, you see it and you're like, oh, there's lots of people actually. And topic for another day. I mean, the trend is less alcohol in society and more non-alcoholic options, non-alcoholic bars, non-alcoholic socialization. And so you're not a weirdo, you're not an outcast just because this is the way you've kind of grown up and it's been your social existence. You can totally make a different choice now and be very supported. Like I think now's the best time ever to make this choice.
absolutely. I think the stigma is starting to
Yeah.
dissipate a bit. And I love that, right? It's not like we're any more special than anybody else here that who does drink. I don't want that to be what's being said here. It's a people are seeing the light. And it's so important to see the light because, as you know, growing up with that background and your dad, I mean, and I've got family members too, on multiple sides that dealt with this over the years. And so it's such an important message, and I wanted to tap into you mentioned earlier about your dad and that he was able to finally get sober. I want you to touch on that.
So for my dad, it took his wife, my mom actually divorcing him, which I think he never thought was ever actually possible. He definitely had his rock bottom moment. It took him several years. He had lots of different false starts through AA and different stuff, but he was older. I think it really kind of opened his eyes that shit, like the one thing I care the most about is finally sort of standing up for herself. And I've got to actually make this choice. And I wasn't around him in the throes of all that, but I was actually surprised whenever I found out they were back together and found out that he was sober. And yeah, so he drank since he was probably like 10. I mean, like not an exaggeration, until 50 something whenever they got divorced. And then they got back together 3 or 4 years later. And then he lived a sober life for like the last 13 years of his life. I think he definitely died prematurely, had dementia. It was very much driven by the alcohol abuse over the years. And I think as I got older, that was weighing on me too, of like, I got a really good brain. I'm very blessed. I'm pickling it, like I'm gonna end up in the same early onset sort of dementia and all this crap that he dealt with. And so dealing with that with him wasn't still enough to make me stop drinking, but it planted a seed. But yeah, I mean, we reconciled. He and my mom lived a good decade, of his last sober years, and I'm very, very grateful for that, because there was a lot of healing and reconciliation that came for me from that too.
Thank you so much for sharing that. I think that's awesome that he did have a period of sober time in his life, right? There's a lot of people that never address it till it's too late, right? And that's the saddest truth. And that's why being able to share these types of messages for others in hopes that they can be empowered to make that shift to literally save your life. I mean, there's no other way to put it, right? Like I can, man, if I was continuing on the path I was on, and I'm sure you can say the same thing, like I was pushing the limits. I mean,
Yeah,
I was
I was, yeah.
looking back and I've just been like, oh, seriously, just going, I mean, I've looked at photos of myself and put myself in those positions. And, seeing you here today, I mean, you just look, your skin is clear. You look trim, young, for you to
Yeah, I
be
look back
40.
at
I would have never guessed
even
40.
a year ago, and or 2 years ago, even a lighter weight, when I was really training harder, my face was like puffy and red, and even though I was quote unquote healthier, you can see it right off the bat that like now I'm pretty youthful, and the face is thinned out, and I actually weigh more than, because I'm not working out as hard and stuff like maybe I was at different periods, but I'm just healthier. It's like the weight's one thing, but I'm just overall much healthier, and that's super comforting. So I'm on a cycle now, a virtuous cycle instead of a vicious cycle of stress and bad sleep. So I drink more, and now I'm in the like peace, which brings more peace, which brings more peace. And it's totally the switch from the vicious to the virtuous was totally the decision to remove alcohol.
Well, I so appreciate your time today. I know you're a busy man. You got things to do. You got to go heckle Des a little bit. In
I
fact,
do
I'm
actually
wearing, Des bought me this shirt. I forgot to tell. And he got me like three or four of these shirts.
if I'm late for my call with Des, and I'm going to be like, hey, you got to give me a pass. I was with Christian on the podcast.
Oh yeah. Well, real quick, I want to wrap this up. For someone who's listening, what is one step that you recommend them taking today to head themselves on this path of an alcohol-free life?
If you're married, I would say have an open and honest conversation with your spouse about here's how I would couch it. Hey, I was listening to this podcast. There's these guys, they seem like they're pretty happy that they quit drinking. I'm not sure that I would want to do that or could do that, but what would you think about that? And you might be really surprised by the response that you get. I think that was a real key moment for me.
Yeah, I agree. Let someone know. Talk to someone close to you. Say, I want to do this. Can you help me? Reach out for help. Even though you think you're isolated, that's totally the key. And so if people wanted to reach out to you, Dustin, now that you've told us your story, how could they do that?
Yeah, so sevenfigureleap.com is my business, and you can contact me through that. I'm also really active on LinkedIn. So if you're a LinkedIn person, Dustin Riechmann, feel free to DM me on LinkedIn. I'd be happy to have a conversation about this, or any of the stuff that I've shared today.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Dustin. I'm so proud of you, man. Congratulations on 10 plus months. Keep it rolling. And I so appreciate our conversation today. So
I
thank you
appreciate
so
you,
much, brother.
Christian. I appreciate you, and thank you from the bottom of my heart for being one of the key examples in my life that made this possible.
Yeah, you're welcome, man. We'll talk to you soon, buddy.